Welcome to this week's edition of the State of Recruiting podcast. I'm Jordan Scruggs, joined by Hank South. Going to be hitting on some Texas recruiting. We're going to start with the commitments. Texas currently has 23 commitments, 22 in the class of 2026, one in the class of 2027. But hey, it's around that time of the year. Commits start popping up at other schools. Signing day getting closer. Incoming chaotic coaching carousel where there's going to be a lot of late shifting close to signing day. But we're going to start with the biggest commitment. Diabell, five-star passer out of Fort Lauderdale. Been committed to Texas since June, going into his junior year of high school. That would have been June of 2024. And has remained locked in. He hasn't visited anywhere else. And, very much so, we are under the belief as long as Steve Sarkisian is at Texas, Diabell will be committed to and eventually signed to Texas. But he's getting mentioned. There are some dominoes that could be falling. Vanderbilt has hosted five-star Georgia quarterback commit Jared Curtis twice on unofficial visits. Still have an official visit to use. They're the hometown program for him. Grew up in Nashville, goes to Nashville Christian. And there are some sources that do believe Vanderbilt will eventually end up landing Curtis. So we'll see about that. The reason we bring it up, because if Curtis leaves Georgia, we expect Georgia to contact Diabell quite quickly. So, again, he hasn't shown any signs of looking elsewhere. The only thing he's done is remain locked in and continue recruiting for the class, but we do have to mention him. He's the leader of the class. Another leader of the class on defense, five-star linebacker Tyler Atkinson. Anything to know on him and his commitment status?
No, I mean he's been locked in since he joined the fold, and it kind of happened quick in the summer. I think a lot of people expected Tyler Atkinson to, obviously Georgia trying to keep the five-star linebacker home that's in their backyard. That was seen as the team to beat. Even Ohio State, that visit to Texas in late June, he was expected at Ohio State, kind of under the radar. That changed up. Decided to come to Austin. Ever since that visit, Texas kind of took hold of that recruitment and were able to swing things in their way. And so since then, I mean, he's been all Texas. I mean, he has a TikTok. I don't know, if you guys are on the TikTok. He does game day videos, and every week he's tagging Texas football and future Texas Longhorn linebacker. He is all Texas. He's been to I want to say he's been to more than one game this year as well in Austin. Not sure if he's going to come in this weekend. Obviously, it's an 11 a.m. kick, but all signs have shown he is solid. But you have to imagine a recruit of his caliber. Georgia's not just going to go quietly. They're going to try to swing him late. Other schools are going to come after him. But I think Texas is in a pretty good position. They have a plan for him. He's their position of need, one of their top guys, top rated players. He's going to play year one in Austin, and I think that helps hang on to him overall, in this kind of crazy stretch. And then I think I was going to just tail right into another elite recruit Texas has committed in Derek Cooper, which, if you follow his visits, you're like, oh, this kid's not going to Texas. But by all accounts and speaking to several different sources close to this recruitment, there doesn't seem to be a lot of concern about Derek Cooper in his commitment to Texas. I know we have him on our commits at risk. I think we have to. He takes a lot of visits to Miami. He lives in South Florida. Miami's having a great season. They're going hard at him, but he's really happy with Texas. He's a maybe on the visitors list this weekend when he comes in. He goes to Terry Black's for the barbecue. I think he likes the plan that the staff has him. He's the only running back in the class at this point, at least, and possibly an opportunity to play early, depending on what happens in that running back room in this offseason. So Derek Cooper, you got to watch the visits. And I know it's not just Miami coming for him. I know Florida State's coming for him. But I've heard, you would think Miami has kind of the inside track in terms of flip threats. But some believe he just wants to leave Miami. Like, he doesn't want to go to Miami as good as their program is doing right now. And so, with that, there's other guys Miami's recruiting on Texas's commitment list, James Johnson. And, I've talked to people that think if Miami is going to put money into, flipping a big time prospect, they're going to put that money towards the defensive line. So I think, as we're talking about these guys, and I won't take James Johnson from you, that could be, one to watch a little bit closer in terms of flip threats.
Yeah. James Johnson, he's at Miami Northwestern, originally from Fort Myers, a little, more north up in Florida. But now in the 305, I can't remember which game it was, but made it to one of Miami's early season games. Has not been back though since, which is notable because like Derek Cooper, he's right there down in South Florida in Miami. It's not a far trip at all. I believe he also, I know he made it to a Texas game. I believe it was the Sam Houston State game, same weekend that Derek Cooper officially visited Texas for. I assume they're probably on the same flight out of Miami. Johnson does not have a visit set for this weekend, but he is tentatively planning to make it to either the Black Friday matchup versus Texas A&M or the game the week before versus Arkansas. Miami's the main school that's been, contacting him, making a push for him. He is a former Georgia commit. They're still hanging around as well, and you can't ever discount the other two big three Florida schools in Florida, Florida State, but you know, much different situation in Tallahassee and Gainesville compared to Coral Gables with the stability and structure projection of the program in the year of 2025. So main one we're watching for James Johnson is Miami, but unless he, I guess, shows back up again on campus, we are kind of expecting Texas to hold on to him. At least that is the expectation in Austin. Another D lineman wanted to hit on Corey Wells out of Petal, Mississippi. He committed to Texas over Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Auburn back in the summer. It was a bit of a surprise. Had only visited Texas once and was not a name mentioned a ton, but hey, that's it's a small town Mississippi prospect. Not quick to respond, not quick to have a ton of info on them, and it's kind of just what it is recruiting big SEC bodies out of SEC country in the state of Mississippi. Ole Miss and Auburn have both hosted him on visits this fall. Auburn has been the main one making a push. They've had him twice. He actually there's a little bit of a loophole where he was able to officially visit Auburn twice since they've offered his brother a scholarship. And one of the OVs was for his brother, technically, where he was a guest. And then Ole Miss, obviously, also in it. So with that, Texas, they like the chances of holding on to Corey Wells. It is a very interesting dynamic. You have Hugh Freeze, who's on a very, very hot seat in Auburn. And then you have Ole Miss in Oxford, who is linked to essentially every big-time job that's opened already and it will open, whether that's, Florida, LSU, Auburn, potentially, who knows. So with Texas, I mean, hey, they're pushing the stability. Even though there are the reports that came out last Saturday of Steve Sarkisian having interest in the NFL, the Longhorns program and the stability with Steve Sarkisian, it's more stable than it is with Hugh Freeze and Auburn. And, you can pretty much say the same thing for Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. Until he signs an extension in Oxford, he's going to continue to get, rumored to be taking the LSU and Florida jobs. So going to be very interesting to track Corey Wells, but another big-time D-line commit for the Longhorns that might be looking a bit elsewhere, Rodney Cleveland out of Birmingham. What's the latest on him?
Yeah, and I should note, just to wrap up on Wells too, is like, could he be a guy that takes 3 official visits to Auburn in the end?
Yeah,
I
good
think a lot of
point.
people think Hugh Freeze is out, or a lot of Auburn fans want Hugh Freeze out. The rule with the NCAA is if there's a new head coach, you can take another official visit. So same could go for Ole Miss. Although I don't know if Wells made an official. I think he just went. I don't know. I can't remember, but potentially 3 official visits to Auburn. So that'll be something to watch if the new staff, assuming if Auburn makes a move, wants to go after him. But Rodney Cleveland, kind of sticking in that southeast region out of Birmingham, committed in the summer. It was a big win. Rodney Cleveland was a guy Bama targeted real early. They got him. I want to say he committed to Alabama a year ago on Halloween, because I remember it was a Halloween thing. But at the time, Texas really liked him then too. It wasn't like a guy they went on the road and saw or saw his junior tape and decided to offer him kind of this past offseason. They liked him last fall. Like he was a guy Kenny Baker coveted early. So Texas had that early interest in him. Obviously, Vodney backed off his commitment. I don't know exactly when and was looking elsewhere. Florida was kind of the main competition when he committed to Texas. That was kind of the 2-team race there. But this past weekend, he actually visited North Carolina. And, you look at that and say, oh, is that a good thing almost, that he's at North Carolina? But at the same time, the NIL era, you never know how what these guys are going to be able to, what's going to entice them to come somewhere. Is it the coach or is it, the NIL money? So, it's certainly something to watch, but, checking in with Vodney himself, he said he's solid with Texas. But again, the last 4 weeks, teams are going to keep coming after him. I'm sure Bama is probably still talking to Vodney Cleveland as well. Going to try to change his mind. It's funny. We're talking about defensive linemen. All the Texas defensive linemen are guys we're keeping an eye on that are committed, because that's how coveted these type prospects are. Like, this is like cream of the crop type targets for all these schools. So Dylan Berryman, another one, Louisiana. We're covering every state. He committed to Texas, and that was kind of a weird one because, at one point it was a Texas LSU thing with Bo Davis, Kenny Baker. Then it turned into a Texas Purdue thing of all kind of head to heads. But as of late, he's been flirting with Ole Miss a lot, and he's actually made 2 separate visits to Oxford. But again, we're talking about the coaching carousel. If Lane Kiffin's not there, is there still a push for Dylan Berryman? Or if Lane Kiffin goes elsewhere, if he goes to Florida, are they going to try to get him to Florida? So that's something we're still watching. Dylan Berryman loves Texas, though. He loves Kenny Baker, considers him like a father figure, and has family in the Austin area. I think he has family kind of in the Cedar Park area. So, when he comes out to Austin, it's kind of a family reunion, and he feels very comfortable here. So I think that kind of wraps up our 2026 guys we're watching. And again, everything grain of salt. We think, one thing today. We do a podcast next Wednesday or Thursday. We could see guys taking visits elsewhere, so it can all change. It's very fluid, as they say. But and what's really fluid is 2027 recruiting. And I know you have one. I think we're all kind of just keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, we wrapped up 2026. Those are just go through real quick. Diabell, Tyler Atkinson, Derek Cooper, Vodney Cleveland, James Johnson, Dylan Berryman, and Corey Wells. Those are the guys, that might be potentially at risk for flips. The lone 2027 commit is also in the same category. Taven Epps out of Tustin, California, top 100 ranked prospect at the linebacker position. He's been committed to Texas since March. It was kind of an out of the blue commitment, but you dig in, find out some things, and makes a lot of sense. This is a kid who's originally from Boyd, Texas. It's a small town, about 45 minutes, an hour northwest of Fort Worth, and lived there up until moving out to California. He's in Southern California, in the Los Angeles area, around middle school. So, this would be an in-state top 247, top 100 linebacker prospect in Texas had he never moved. And he grew up cheering for the Longhorns. That was the program for him. And at Tustin, he has a coach that's kind of a mentor, recruiting coordinator, I guess. The nickname for these guys has always been handlers. But he has someone in his circle that is from Southern California and went to USC. And he was recruited to USC by Johnny Nansen and Steve Sarkisian and played for them at USC. His connection with Nansen and Sarkisian has always been there. They remained in touch over the years. And him sending Epps and his film and the information on to Nansen and Sark is how Texas is one of the earlier offers. So they have the connection there that no other school has. That's very important. There's also the fact that he's originally from Boyd, Texas, and grew up as an in-state kid pulling for the Burnt Orange. But he's a very coveted prospect. This is a former safety that grew into a linebacker body. He can cover extremely well. He goes both ways. He can run and catch. He does both, scoring touchdowns each Friday night in Southern California. So a lot to like about him, and that is why other schools have been very aggressive with him. Alabama, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, North Carolina, I believe USC have all hosted him for game day visits. He has not been to Texas on one this fall, but he's scheduled to be in Austin for the A&M game on Black Friday. It's very interesting. He's committed to Texas, but still taking other visits, not super committed, but he's a junior. This is what happens when top 100 prospects commit early. They continue to take visits. He's told someone at our company he wants to continue taking visits elsewhere and make several official visits before deciding what he's going to do by the end of the summer is when he hopes to do it. So there's a long way to go in this one. I'd say it's probably 50-50 chance Texas holds on to him. I want to say it's higher, but if you're going to take all these game day visits and already have an idea that you're going to take 5 OVs in the summer, what really are the chances? And that's kind of wait and see with him. So those are the 8 commits we think are at risk. Guys we want to mention that don't want to say at risk but not at risk because it's kind of the gray area. Hayward Howard Jr., cornerback commit out of Edna Carr in New Orleans. Has been nothing but solid to the Longhorns, but has been to LSU for a visit. Was at their game versus Texas A&M. They got Brian Kelly fired. And Edna Carr has like 2, if not 3, seniors that are also committed to LSU. And I mean, everyone knows the draw that LSU and the Tigers have for in-state Louisiana kids. So can't ever ignore that. But with LSU in the position it's in, and them also never having really pushed for Hayward, Texas, we think they hold on. And then Richard Wesley, he's done nothing but remain solid, remain committed, and continue visiting Texas. Hasn't taken trips elsewhere. But Richard Wesley's also the same kid that jumped into a pool with his shirt off with Dan Lanning. Like, we're not going to rule out anything here. He was a top 5 prospect in the country before he reclassed up a year to 2026. Like, schools will be very aggressive with him towards signing day, trying to pull off something late.
Yeah.
So
He told me, just to add to that real quick, he told me Oregon and Ohio State were still talking to him, but he said he had no plans to visit anywhere else when we caught up with him a couple weeks ago. So we'll see if he stays true to that. And, he said he wants to get out to the Vanderbilt game if he can, obviously an 11 a.m. kick. But he said if not, he'd like to go to the Arkansas game too. So, we'll see how his playoff schedule allows him or frees him up.
Oh, yeah. And then these are the guys we don't think are at risk. We fully expect them to sign with Texas come December 3rd. 5-star athlete Jermaine Bishop, top 247 offensive lineman John Turntine, top 247 corner Samari Matthews, 3-star linebacker Kosek Paula, 3-star receiver Chris Stewart, 3-star offensive tackle Max Wright, 3-star interior offensive lineman Nick Robertson, 3-star receiver Cohen Brown, 3-star safety Miami Riley, and then the 3 specialists, the kicker commit Jake Collette, the long snapper commit Trot O'Neill, and the punter commit Mikey Bukauskas. So, not a bad rate for guys who are confident in them keeping or holding on to. Speaking of holding on to, LSU is going to have a new ball coach. They have a great 2026 class headlined by a really good defensive line group. Texas, they lost several recruitments of guys that are now committed to LSU. But with Brian Kelly gone, a new coach, waiting to be hired in Baton Rouge, expect Texas to be aggressive. We talked about it last episode. A lot of Texas's best players of the Sark era ended up in Austin from getting flipped from programs that just lost their coach or had just fired it. Kelvin Banks, Cam Williams flipping from Oregon to Texas after Cristobal left for Miami, being the prime example. So the headliner of LSU's class, none other than Lamar Brown, top 10 prospect out of University Lab. It is a high school that is run through the university. It's quite literally on LSU's campus. The full name of the high school is the Louisiana State University Laboratory High School. Since the jump, no one has thought Lamar Brown was going to end up outside of Baton Rouge. The only people that did were Aggies that thought they were going to land him, but, we saw how that turned out. Texas, they had an in through Lylan Clark. Lylan Clark is from Baton Rouge. He's the Texas edge coach. And Lylan Clark's father is a longtime high school coach in the Baton Rouge area who coached Lamar Brown alongside his son, Allen, multiple times at summer camps growing up. So Lylan Clark has known Lamar Brown like going on 10 years, and that is the sole reason Lamar Brown even made it to campus for an official visit back in the summer. So, they're going to shoot their best shot. This is an NFL prospect as long as he stays healthy. But if Lamar Brown's going to end up flipping, which I think is unlikely, right now the school that make more sense is Texas A&M. Another former Texas target, maybe current Texas target, Jabari Mack, the top 247 LSU receiver commit out of Destrehan. Destrehan is the same high school that produced LSU great Justin Jefferson. So there's a lot of LSU ties there. I believe his father went to LSU, but a bit of a weird recruitment. Early on, did not talk up LSU at all. We never got the reason why, and he would almost always mention Texas, Texas A&M, and Oregon as his 3 schools. In January, after visiting for the junior day, he told the Texas media market, it's Texas versus Texas A&M. Those are the schools at the top, and then committed to LSU out of the blue about 2.5 months later. So probably a guy LSU ends up keeping. Again, he's at the same high school that produced Justin Jefferson, the best receiver in the NFL. So I don't know about the chances, but if he is to flip, I think Texas is the school would be for. This is a guy Chris Jackson loves, has always loved, and he also committed to LSU before he took an official visit to Texas. So the Longhorns still have that official visit to use in their back pocket. But those are the main guys I'm watching from LSU's class. There's two more we got our eyes on: edge Trenton Henderson and cornerback Havon Finney. Tell us about those guys.
Yeah, Henderson's interesting. That was another summer one where Texas offered him, I think in January, and they made a push for him throughout the spring. But it didn't seem like anything was turning up. Come June, though, he actually took an unofficial visit to Austin. I forgot exactly the day, but it was in June, and then they got him scheduled for that final weekend in the June 20th, 22nd weekend.
It was very strange. They had him on like a Tuesday or Wednesday, and then he
Yeah,
returned for an OV that like
yeah.
same Friday through Sunday. It was very weird.
And so, yeah, you look at that and you're like, oh, okay, back to back. It was almost kind of what Lamar Brown did, where he took the official in early June, then wanted to go back for the 20th before that got called off. But no, I mean Trenton Henderson. It's funny with his recruitment now. If you look at it, he's from Pensacola, Texas, or LSU beat out Texas and
Florida.
sorry, I'm going to Texas and Florida. So now the school he committed to and one of the other finalists, neither has a head coach, and so the only school, we talk about stability. But I reached out to Trenton a few weeks ago. He said he hadn't really heard from Texas in a minute, or hadn't been as inconsistent contact with them. We'll see if they decide to swing back on that and test the waters. Texas wants to add another edge in this class. I think that's very clear to go along with Richie Wesley. Trenton Henderson, that's probably as good as you're going to find if you want to get another elite style edge. Texas obviously has a lot to market itself with in terms of the production they're showing with Colin Simmons, Ethan Burke. And, at the same time, I know Texas has kind of run up into some difficulty this year. They're only losing Burke off that, out of the edge room this offseason. So, maybe.
And Trey Moore kind of, but.
Yeah. So, in terms of, immediate playing time, you see Lance Jackson kind of coming along more. Zena is getting a lot more playing time. So, maybe the path to playing time isn't as readily there, but at the same time, you could have said that coming into this season. Then we're seeing a guy like Lance Jackson make some noise. So Trenton Henderson, someone to watch. I think Texas would, certainly like to stay in contact. And there's Drake Quinn as well, who's, that's a lot of teams coming at him too. So it could be kind of some twists and turns there at the edge. Havon Finney, another interesting one, a guy that like Richie Wesley, a teammate of Richie Wesley out at Sierra Canyon in California. He also reclassified from 2027 to 2026. Texas seems pretty intent on adding another cornerback in this class. We've seen offers out. We'll talk about a guy later on the visitors list. They have Hayward Howard Jr. committed. They have Jermaine Bishop committed, depending on if you want to consider him a cornerback or a wide receiver. Obviously, a pretty exciting playmaker on offense. And then, of course, the last name is Samari Matthews, obviously, who's on a big time addition that we're not concerned with. So, they want to add one more in this class. Finney could be a really interesting one in that, he was already considering Texas prior to committing to LSU. No coach now. I think that'll probably obviously depend a lot on Corey Raymond, what happens there. But that's a guy we're going to be keeping an eye on going forward. And I think, maybe we see him show up on campus in the month of November as well.
Yeah. Real quick on Trenton Henderson, Texas currently has one edge committed in Richard Wesley. He profiles as the Jack. Texas, they have two different edge positions in their defense, the Jack, the Buck. The Jack, the best way to dumb it down, that's what Ethan Burke plays. You're a bigger, slower guy that can defend the run. And then the Buck, traditionally a speed rusher, guy who will be in a 2-point stance. That's the Colin Simmons position. Richard Wesley is a Jack. That's the harder body type to find. There's just very few guys on this earth who have plus wingspans, big hands, and are also 6'5 plus, and their frames can hold north of 280. It's very hard to find, and they have that in Richard Wesley, which is good, but they want their Buck, the speed rushing guy, and that's Trenton Henderson. That's what Drake Quinn is. That's kind of what Jamarian Carlton was. He's kind of a tweener of both, but we don't expect them to circle back on him. So Henderson and Quinn, they make a lot of sense to end up at Texas, at least positional wise in the fit. Also love Carter Buck. I like Travis. Any chance I get to shout him out, I like to. He's leading 6A in sacks. I mean, don't overthink it. And he's a TCU commit that would flip very quickly from TCU to Texas. But nonetheless, with Henderson, one thing to remember, he lives in Pensacola. It's in Florida, but it is a shorter drive from Pensacola to Baton Rouge than it is from Pensacola to Gainesville. Something to keep in mind, depending on who those new hires are, could still end up at LSU. And I mean, we didn't really mention it, but like the recruit reactions on Brian Kelly getting fired were not a good sign for Brian Kelly. Like, if anything, they could improve their recruiting from this, and they have a high chance to retain a lot of these kids because LSU is one of the few like programs that kids still commit to because of the name of the school, because of the school and the tradition, not just the coach and NIL. So, like, they literally picked up a commitment from a kid in Louisiana the morning after Brian Kelly was fired. He committed to LSU without a coach. So,
Yeah.
they can very well hold on to a lot of this class. Other names I think they could look at, Richard Anderson. He's a top 50 prospect on the D-line. Never visited Texas, but they've always been big fans. Bryson Martinez, he's an offensive tackle, guard tweener, top 100 prospect. Early offer from Texas, but never visited and ended up at LSU pretty quickly. And then the same exact thing with Aiden Hall, except he's a safety. He's teammates with Hayward Howard at Edna Carr. Same with Richard Anderson, that D lineman. And then they'd have more time on this one, but hey, Peyton Houston, is he going to stay committed to LSU? I would assume so, but Kavian Bryant, he's committing to most likely to Texas Tech on Saturday, November 1st. Peyton Houston was the other QB that they honed in on and targeted in 27, so maybe they look to flip him. And then names on the roster I think Texas could look at. There's dozens of guys, but I'll just do it the positions that make sense for Texas. Running backs, Caden Durham and Harlem Berry. Receiver, Kyle Parker. I highly doubt that they will look at him because they told him no several times in high school, but maybe. Tight end, Trades Green. I expect him to stay there at LSU. He's from Zachary, Louisiana, and is probably going to be the top tight end selected in the draft in April of 2027. They have a really loaded O-line room, which is kind of surprising considering how bad their O-line has played this year. But Carius Kern, Weston Davis, two young offensive tackles that could start at Texas right now, I think. Same with Solomon Thomas, a true freshman offensive tackle. And then you have Ori Williams, a kid Texas actually recruited a few years ago, lost out on to LSU. And then interior linemen, Cohen Eccles, DJ Chester, and Tyree Adams. Cohen Eccles is a 2-year starter, 2-year player. Originally from Texas, went to Katy High in Houston, and was an A&M commit that flipped to LSU. Texas never offered him. So those are the guys on offense. And then on defense, Dom McKinley and Zion Williams on the interior. Two guys Texas had for OVs but missed out on. And then edge rusher Damian Shanklin, guy out of Indiana that Texas had an OV for but were never really competitive. And then at linebacker, Charles Ross. He's a true freshman backer. This kid went 4.34 on the 40-yard dash laser at Under Armour Houston. It was the fastest 40-yard dash time recorded at all Under Armour's camps last year. Devon Keys, he's another linebacker they have. Texas never offered him, just like Ross, but he's out of Alito, has played pretty well for them, and Texas is going to have to get a linebacker out of the portal. And then in the secondary, highly doubtful this guy would enter the portal, and if he did, highly doubtful he'd end up at Texas. But DJ Pickett, he was the number 2 corner in the country last year behind Devin Sanchez. He's starting as a true freshman, and it's looked like the best true freshman DB in college football. And then you also have other secondary guys that are year 1 or year 2 players Texas could have interest in. Aiden Anding, a guy they were going to get until LSU offered him the night before he was supposed to commit to Texas, ended up there. You have PJ Woodland, a corner out of Mississippi, and then safeties Deshaun Spears, Jacob Bradford. Texas offered Spears in high school. They did not with Bradford, but he is the older brother of borderline 5-star safety Blaine Bradford, who committed to Ohio State over LSU and Texas earlier this cycle. So maybe something there. Last but not least, we're going to look at the Texas-Vandy visitor list. Diabell will be in town. It'll be his first time in Austin since the OV. He visited for the Texas OU game, but that was in Dallas, not in Austin.
He's actually, he tweeted he's coming in on Thursday. So today, recording, But so yeah, he'll be in for a couple of days. Someone tweeted at him. They're like, "Well, what are you doing on Saturday?" It's like, no, he's like coming to Austin for a few days. So, yeah, hang out. But yeah, sorry.
Maybe you'll catch the good guys in West Austin, Lake Travis, coming off a big win versus versus Westlake. I don't know.
Maybe.
Jermaine Bishop, he'll be in town, 5-star athlete commit out of Willis, also the Houston area all-time leading receiver. Fun fact. Chris Stewart, Nick Robertson, 2 other Texas commits from the Houston area. Stewart, the receiver, Robertson, the guard/center commit. They'll be in town. Hayward Howard, big visit for him. He was at LSU last weekend. It was a trip that no one in his family made. He was in a van with several Edna Carr teammates, Edna Carr coaches, but, somewhat close, good game. He went there, and he's back in Austin. 2 or maybe 1 official visitors. One that is for sure officially visiting, Karen Maycock. What a name, out of Miami Central. He's a Florida State linebacker commit, 3-star prospect. Talking to someone in Tallahassee throughout this week, Florida State does not like their chances of holding on to Maycock. If he's a take at Texas like we expect him to be, they wouldn't offer him and host him for an OV less than a week later if he wasn't a take. They expect him to end up at Texas. So it's up to Texas to push. We expect them to, but Maycock could potentially maybe end up in Texas's class by the end of the weekend. Teray Davis, he's the 3-star athlete prospect Texas offered out of Boulder, Colorado. Might be an unofficial visit, might be an OV. We still need to confirm. We think it might have something to do with the recruitment of Havon Finney, the LSU commit who is teammates with Richard Wesley at Sierra Canyon. So we're still checking on that, but he is expected in town. And then 3 2027s we have down right now. Amir Brown, a running back out of Rollsville, North Carolina, was committed to UNC and is coveted by schools a lot more than his ranking reflects as a 3-star. I think it's his first ever visit to Texas. And then you have borderline 5-star receiver, Easton Royal. He's at a Brother Martin in New Orleans. LSU, Florida, and Texas are kind of the ones at the top. Of course, with him being an in-state, Louisiana kid at New Orleans, everyone expects him to end up at LSU. We'll see if the coaching change shakes things up. I doubt it, considering he's at 27. But, a huge target. Think it's his first time in Austin. And, this dude is a difference maker. He's one of those Louisiana receivers that it's like, every time you throw him the ball, he's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to score this. Like literally a third of his receptions are almost touchdowns. It's nuts. And last but not least, really productive linebacker out of Southeast Texas, Bridge City 2027 linebacker Bryce Breeden. He's got about a dozen offers, a lot of Big 12 schools, some Power 4s, I think like the Arizona States, Houston's, Baylor's, Tech. Has never been to Texas. It'll be his first time on campus, or at least as a recruit. They were going to host him for a camp at one point this summer, but there was really bad weather in Austin for like a 2-day stretch, and they ended up canceling that camp. So they want to get eyes on him, get measurements, and could be an offer candidate. Outside of Cooper Witten, the in-state 2027 linebacker class is absolutely atrocious. So maybe he becomes the number 2 guy behind Witten, not sure. But that's all we got for the Vandy, Texas visitor list. Stay tuned at Horns 24/7 for more later in the week. Hank, anything you want to close it out with before we get out of here?
No, I guess we'll see what this weekend brings. Any more coach firings potentially? Some spooky Halloween coaching carousel news. I don't know. We'll see, and how that impacts Texas. But yeah, it's about to get pretty crazy. But I think that wraps up State of Recruiting for this week, and we'll be back next week with another good episode.
Sir, thanks for tuning in. Peace.